Thanks for joining us. This is Omni View, episode 127 for July 29th, 2026. Multiple perspectives, one briefing. The day's biggest stories from around the world, what happened, how different viewpoints frame it, so you can decide for yourself. Russia charges Telegram's founder with aiding terrorism and issues an international arrest warrant, raising questions about platform liability worldwide. Russian authorities have charged Pavel Durov, the founder of the messaging app Telegram, with aiding terrorism and placed him on an international wanted list. The move follows earlier legal actions against the company in Russia. Telegram is used by hundreds of millions of people globally for private and public communication. Russian officials frame the charges as necessary to curb the use of encrypted platforms by groups they designate as threats, pointing to Telegram's role in coordinating activities they view as illegal. The AP News report details how the charges tie into broader Russian efforts to monitor online activity during the Ukraine conflict. Western governments and digital rights organizations have often criticized similar Russian cases as attempts to extend domestic control over global communication tools. Reuters' coverage of regional security notes parallel steps by other governments to regulate messaging services. Durov has previously resisted demands for backdoors or user data in multiple countries, arguing that weakening encryption harms ordinary users more than it helps security services. Everything turns on whether the charges target specific messages tied to attacks or rest on the general refusal to install backdoors. Russian authorities maintain that messaging services must cooperate with lawful requests when their platforms are used to organize attacks or evade detection, because the alternative leaves security agencies without tools against documented threats. Civil liberties groups and technology companies counter that forcing broad access or data handover creates systemic vulnerabilities that authoritarian governments can exploit against dissidents and journalists, and that targeted warrants on specific accounts already provide a narrower path. What happens next, the first compliance deadlines, and any extradition requests will show how far the charges reach beyond Russia's borders. Shifting now to a development in the Pacific. New Zealand announced plans to acquire strike drones as part of a broader effort to modernize its armed forces. The purchase is intended to improve surveillance and response capabilities in the country's maritime region. Reuters reports the acquisition forms one element of a multi-year defense review that also includes upgrades to naval and air assets. Defense officials in Wellington describe the drones as a practical way to monitor vast ocean areas with limited personnel. Neighboring countries in the Pacific have expanded similar unmanned systems in recent years, prompting New Zealand to keep pace with regional military trends. Some domestic voices have questioned whether the spending aligns with the country's traditional emphasis on peacekeeping rather than offensive equipment. Reuters' coverage highlights how the decision responds to shifting security assessments in the South Pacific, where several governments now integrate drone fleets into routine patrols. What happens next? The multi-year review will determine the scale and timing of the first drone deliveries. Next, an announcement from India's energy sector. NTPC, India's biggest electricity generator, said it will invest $178 billion through 2037 to expand capacity. The plan covers both renewable and conventional sources. Reuters notes the investment spans more than a decade and will be financed through a mix of internal funds and external borrowing. Government statements link the spending to rising electricity demand from industry and households. Energy analysts note that meeting the target will require steady policy support and financing. Environmental groups have urged faster renewable deployment within the same budget to limit emissions growth. Reuters reporting places the figure against India's official target of reaching 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel capacity by 2030, showing how the NTPC program fits into that national goal. What happens next? Actual spending will depend on future budgets and technology choices across the coming decade. Turning to company results in the technology supply chain. SK Hynix reported its highest ever quarterly profit, driven by demand for AI chips. Yet the figure fell short of analyst expectations. Shares dropped 10% in early trading. Reuters states the profit rose 557% from the same quarter a year earlier. Company executives attributed the result to strong memory chip sales for data centers. Market participants appear to have priced in even faster growth, leading to the sell-off. The outcome illustrates how high expectations in the AI supply chain can produce sharp price moves even on positive underlying demand. Reuters notes that SK Hynix remains one of the three largest suppliers of high-bandwidth memory chips used in advanced AI training systems. What happens next? Upcoming technology earnings reports will give further signals on whether demand continues to outpace forecasts. Meanwhile, markets showed little movement ahead of a key policy decision. Major stock indexes showed little movement as investors waited for the U.S. Federal Reserve's policy announcement and upcoming technology earnings reports. Reuters describes the session as one of the quietest in recent weeks across major exchanges. Traders cited uncertainty over interest rate paths as the main reason for muted activity. Technology shares, which have led recent gains, are expected to provide clearer signals once results are released. The quiet session reflects a market that prefers to see concrete data before committing to larger positions. Reuters Market Wrap notes that futures pricing shows investors now expect the Fed to hold rates steady at the upcoming meeting. What happens next? The Federal Reserve announcement itself will set the tone for trading in the days after. Now, some progress worth knowing about. NTPC announced a $178 billion investment program running to 2037 aimed at increasing electricity generation. The company is state-controlled and supplies a large share of India's power. Reuters reports the program will add both solar, wind, and thermal capacity across multiple states. Officials present the plan as a response to projected demand growth over the next decade. The long time frame means actual spending will depend on future budgets and technology choices. One complication is balancing new coal capacity with renewable goals already set by the national government. Reuters coverage shows the investment is expected to create thousands of construction and operations jobs in regions where new plants are sited. What happens next? Job creation figures and capacity additions will be tracked against the national non-fossil target. Now, to really understand this story, there's something most coverage leaves out. Most coverage of charges against a messaging app founder treats the case as a simple law enforcement step, yet the underlying mechanism is a clash between national jurisdiction and global infrastructure. When a country issues an international wanted list for a founder whose company is incorporated elsewhere and whose servers are distributed, it relies on extradition treaties and financial pressure points rather than direct control of the code. The last several decades show that such actions rarely shut platforms down. Instead, they prompt companies to adjust moderation policies or relocate staff while encryption remains intact. Similar cases involving other encrypted services have led to negotiated settlements rather than outright bans. Knowing this, when reports emphasize either terrorism crackdown or free speech attack, readers can check whether the specific charge names particular messages or merely the general refusal to install backdoors. A concrete detail to verify next time is whether the charging document lists individual user accounts or simply the company's architecture. Another useful step is to compare the exact wording of the indictment with statements issued by the company's legal team. If you want to go deeper on today's lead, compare how AP News and Reuters are covering it. You will see two different frames on the same facts. Tomorrow, watch for the U.S. Federal Reserve's policy announcement and any immediate market reaction. That's Omni View. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. The world is complicated, but it's not beyond understanding, and you just spent a few minutes understanding it better. If that's worth something to you, subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow, and if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at Nara Network. Links in the show notes. This show comes to you from the Nara Network. If you want another sharp daily briefing, Tesla Shorts Time has you covered. Your daily deep dive into everything Tesla. All our shows are free at naranetwork.com. The Do Positive Pod is the club for people who do something about it. Episodes and the dispatch wall at naranetwork.com/thedppod. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.